Hello there, I'm Dr. Tyler Desplender, and this is my book, Foundations of Strongman Training. I've used my scientific training to perform brand new research studies on the sport of strongman and combined it with over a decade of personal experience competing in strongman and powerlifting to teach you how to train like the strongest people on earth. I've decided to make a video series on the content of the book. I'm going to share with you everything from how the book idea came to be to practical considerations for the insights gained from these scientific studies. By the end of this video series, you'll have the information you need to optimize your strongman training. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining me for the first episode of Foundations of Strongman Training. In case you don't know me, my name is Tyler Desplenter. I'm the founder of Strength Intelligence, and I'm really excited today because this is the first episode of an 8-part series that I want to do on my new book that I released recently, which is called Foundations of Strongman Training. So, here it is. Look at that handsome fella. If you are interested in strongman training or how to optimize your training for the pursuit of the sport of strongman, then I highly recommend you pick up this book, support my work, and there's a ton of first-time research that I present in the book that I've conducted over the last decade or so, and I know will help you optimize your training and hopefully get those desired strength gains you're looking for. So let me give you a bit of background about this video series and what you can expect from it before we dive into the first episode here. So a few months ago, while I was publishing this book, right in the final stages of it, I had this realization that I would love to do a video kind of lecture series about the content in the book. I have, just so you know, I have a background in academia, so I love that these kind of topics and discussing them, and lecture style presentations of data and of the contents of scientific inquiries. So I thought, why don't I do something similar but for the contents of my book? The purpose there is that I can reach a much larger audience. Some people don't like to read; they prefer a video format. And this way, I can also make it freely available to everybody. So maybe you can't afford the book, maybe you don't want to buy the book. That's cool. It doesn't matter, because this way I can record, the highlights from the book, share them with you, and you'll still be able to take away those tidbits of knowledge and apply them to your training programs and hopefully optimize that training and see some great results. Over the next few weeks, I'm going to be releasing episodes where I take a deep dive into each one of the chapters or aspects of those chapters and give you the details of them at a very high level. Obviously, if you want the dirty details, you can buy the book and dive into it yourself. But I'm going to give you an overview of what's there and hopefully something you find useful. Now, today's episode, I wanted to give you what I've laid out in the preface of the book, which kind of, I guess, sets the tone for the rest of the episodes. I'm going to discuss, why did I take this endeavor on? What really sparked it? What kind of problem did I see? And how did I come to the conclusion that the book would be a solution for that? So that's what I'm going to go through today. And then the remaining episodes will dig into the content of each of the chapters laid out in the book. Okay, so let's dive into kind of the background context here for this book, the video series, and everything I've been doing in terms of researching strongman and strength training in general. So this all starts with the idea that humans need to be strong. Humans have different needs for their capacity for strength, but you need to be strong enough to do at least daily tasks, right? And for me, though, I've had a fascination with strength. I grew up hearing these crazy stories about my grandfather, who was probably like an average, height and weight male doing these crazy feats of strength. And I think from a young age that really got me going on it. On top of that, I was born with asthma, and so I've had a really hard time breathing. And I wasn't able to say run and do all the endurance types of skills that like other kids can do. So it really, but I noticed that I could be strong. I could like exert a lot of force for a very short period of time before I needed to take my inhalers. So I think those two things really set off the catalyst, like for why I am so enthused about strength and researching how to obtain it and maintain it for as long as possible. All right, so that's the kind of foundations for this inquiry into strength that I've had from a very young age. As I became a teenager and moving on, I started training at the gym with my friends. I started watching strongman on TV and weightlifting, and I thought, man, that's fascinating. These guys are huge, they're jacked, women too, and they don't need to be able to run very far. Or at least that's what it seems like. So that was kind of like appealing to me. And as I like looked into it more, I realized that strongman athletes are the ultimate expression of strength. And I decided, okay, I want to be the ultimate expression of strength, or at least see what my body's capable of. So I decided to start watching first, just watching strongman live. There's a local show here in Woodstock, Ontario, I went to for a few years, trying to wrap my mind around it. What do these guys do? Are there different weight classes or anything like other sports? No, there wasn't at the time. What kind of events do they do? And then finally, in about 2012, I decided that I would start training for strongman. And then the next year, I would actually compete in my first strongman contest in August of 2013. So that would give me this really hands-on experience to see just how far I could push my own strength, given the limitations of my pulmonary system and what have you. So I've been competing now for 12 seasons, going into 13 seasons. On top of this, I decided to pursue academia during this time. From 2013 to 2018, I was getting my doctoral degree, and that made me like very interested not only in the kind of anecdotal, practical side of things that you could get from competing, but also in the scientific side of things. So what does the literature say about different training methods in terms of strongman, or how do they peak for contests, or how do they gain the most muscle, how do their competition schedules look, things like that. So that was kind of my mindset and background there. And early in my career, because of that, I went to the literature, because I, just like I was doing for the other scientific inquiries in my life, I tried to see what's out there first. So when I looked at the literature, I realized there wasn't a lot there. A lot of the studies were just focused on how can, say, a certain strongman implement like a log or a tire be integrated into the training program for some other sport. There was nothing that I could find that was like, here's a bunch of individuals, their main sport is strongman, and here's all of the statistical data about like how to choose which skills to train for different phases of your career, how to set your competition schedule, how to break down the structure of your training, and build up tens of or hundreds of different skills across a short period of time. And so I thought this is very odd, because if you look at the literature, say for strength training in general, even just stuff like barbell work in the gym, there's like hundreds of studies. And if you add in studies for other sports, hockey, football, even powerlifting and weightlifting, they're like the aggregation of all those is like thousands of papers in the literature that people can use to guide how they might train or how they might make certain training decisions. So this was kind of baffling to me, just because if you're trying to research strength, why would you not research the strongest people on earth? Now, if you're trying to research strength for a specific domain, that makes sense. But how come there's only a handful of papers at this time on the strongest people on earth? Because even within that sport, as we'll get into later episodes, there's a ton of variability. These athletes have to be so well rounded. in a whole bunch of different skills, and there's a lot of uncertainty in the sport, so they need to be able to adapt to all of that. For example, what other sport has the kind of disclaimer where events are subject to change day of contest? So you might know your events for 6 months, you get there at the contest, and two of those events just get changed for whatever reason. That's like very hard to optimize your training and make sure that you're well rounded and basically just strong all over and ready and prepared for anything. So now I speculate why there's no a couple reasons why there is very few studies in the literature. First of all, when I started this inquiry in 2013-14, strongman was very much still mostly like parking lot level contests. Some countries may have had like a nationals, but there wasn't organization underneath to kind of like for athletes to work their way to the nationals. When I started, it was literally just like contests were at fairs, and there was no sanctioning body or federation. It was just individual promoters, and so that lack of organization, I think, might be one reason, and it's related to a second reason, which is like a lack of interest means that there's a lack of interest in funding the research. So if the sport itself is already kind of a niche sport, especially at that time, there's not a lot of fans, there's not a lot of money coming into the sport. Research granting agencies might say, why would we fund your study on the sport of strongman? Like, what's the total impact that's going to come out of it versus some other studies where they could have funded other sports, say like baseball or something that has a worldwide audience, soccer, things like that. So that's kind of my speculation about like why there, wasn't any research studies. The studies weren't there to answer some of these fundamental questions that I was looking, to for answers about how to be the best strongman athlete I can be. And that's what it was. So I took it upon myself and I decided, at this time, 2015, 16, that I'm just going to compete. So if there's no literature there, the next, that is what it is. But when you're doing something physical like this, the best thing to do is to just get into it. So I just ramped up the number of competitions that I could handle, given my schedule. And from that kind of initial contest, 2013 to 2016, I just tried to do as many competitions during the strongman season as I could. And that was my way to learn about the sport, right? So, like I said, promoters there was no standardization. People are picking different events, things are changing, and so that was like very valuable practical experience. When I got to about 2016 though, that's when I realized there's got to be a better way, because if someone doesn't do something about this, then every athlete will just have to go through the same struggles, and obviously they'll be unique to that individual, and there won't be much global wisdom gained because everyone will just go down their own path. And because there's so much variability, it might be hard to determine what parts of that experience are transferable to other people and then they might be at different times in their careers as well. So the anecdotal evidence was great. I learned a lot those first few years competing as a strongman athlete, but I decided that if no one else is going to do it, maybe I should. So I decided to be the change that I wanted to see. And again, at this time, I was doing scientific research in other domains, in wearable robotics and modeling human motion, EMG signals, and all that fun stuff. And so I thought, why don't I just open up another inquiry into strongman training and see what I can do in terms of my own research study? So that's what I did. I set out a goal that I wanted to answer one fundamental question that I couldn't find answers to in the scientific literature or in the non-scientific literature either. No one had really laid out an answer to the question, what skills should a strongman athlete master? At this time, there was no publicly available databases as well. And so I knew that I would have to collect data from any public sources that I could get, because I also couldn't find any private sources that had this data, especially for amateur athletes. I might have been able to contact someone like, World's Strongest Man, Arnold Strongman Classic organizers, and get private data about those particular contests. Um, but there was nothing global, and there was definitely nothing for amateur athletes. So I decided, if I'm going to answer this question about what skills, I'm going to have to just collect competition data myself. I'm going to have to do it by hand. I'm going to have to do it from whatever public sources that I have available to me. So, in about 2016, this is when I made this decision. So, what I decided to do was collect contest event descriptions. And if any of you have looked in, competed in strongman, some of these descriptions are very vague. Don't give you all the details, but that's what was available at the time. So that's what I did. So I gathered those contest event descriptions from promoters putting up, forum posts, Facebook event posts. There was a federation starting around that time that was had a website with some of the contest details. So I was just taking data from all these little pieces, and so in 2016 I went back for that year and 2015, and I collected all the contests that I knew about, and I knew about them because I was an athlete at the time in Ontario, Canada. That's where I live. And so I scoured the internet, grabbed everything I could, contacted promoters, get details, tried to work it out. At the end of that inquiry, I had a little less than 50 contests total. Already having some experience from my doctoral studies and undergrad studies with statistics and the variability I knew about in strongman, I had a feeling that this was not going to give me enough data points. I knew I needed more data. So as painstaking as it was, what I decided to do was I would collect data for 5 years. So for 3 more years until 2019, I would collect the data from all the contests in Ontario that I could find. I would reanalyze that data set to try to pull some, identify some trends, pull any statistically significant findings that I could find about the skills in there. And I reanalyzed, and then the goal was to publish this as a journal article, which is one of the main things that, doctoral students, professors do. And so I just decided I would do this on the side as I went through the rest of my life. So for those 3 years, 2016, roughly the end of that to the end of 2019, I collected 5 years worth of data. At the end, I decided I have this draft of an article. I have this final data set. Let's do one more evaluation. So I analyzed the data, and guess what? There's no statistically significant findings in terms of what skills were more prevalent than others. Part of the problem there is because the breadth of skills and that they're always changing. Sometimes this one skill appears once and never again for 6 years. And so that made it very difficult. It means that I would have needed a much larger data set to try to find if I was going to compare between individual skills in terms of their like occurrences and how often they occur across the competitive seasons of multiple years. So that was very disappointing. At the same time, I was had just got my PhD, and I was realizing that I was not going to be able to be a professor, which was very sad because that was my goal all along. That's why I kind of went through all this schooling and pursued that part of my career. And I knew also whatever job I would take, I wouldn't have the money to publish this work myself, even if I found something that was had an impact worth publishing on, because typically journals charge authors thousands of dollars to publish a piece of their work, especially for open access, which means that you would get to read it for free. So all of these things combined to a very, what would I say, dismal point in terms of my research into strongman. Now it was great because I was learning a lot, pairing that inquiry with my experience continuing to compete. But all of it was kind of left me in a state of like, where do I go now? Is this worth it? On one hand, on the other hand, man, I spent a lot of time on this, and I had this gut feeling if I just keep digging, I know I'm going to uncover more things. There's going to be a lot more work, but I bet it will help people. And so that, kind of time, end of 2019, I decided that I would, and I took one leap of faith to do this study. I decided I needed to take an even bigger one. And I decided that I was going to do more studies and try to publish a book about all of this research that I've done in hopes that I would be able to, first of all, help people. And second of all, maybe start a career as a privately funded professor. So I wasn't able to be a publicly funded one at a university like I had intended, but maybe this was a route for me to explore doing it privately funded, where all of you are able to support this work that I do, and I'm able to give back to you by digging into this research, performing new research, and hopefully giving you new insights that can help you optimize your training and hopefully get to your goals quicker and with less frustration. So that's what I decided to do. So that decision was like near the end of 2019. And for the next 5 years, I spent much of my free time doing more research. So I ended up doing, so that was one study I told you about. I ended up doing three more original research studies. And then obviously writing about all of those into this book right here, Foundations of Strongman Training. Now, I do need to give a shout out here to Strongman Archives. These guys saved me an immense amount of time and suffering. If you haven't checked it out, basically it's a public database of past competition event data and scorings. So you can go on there, you can learn all about, you can pick a contest like World's Strongest Man 1997. You can go and see what are the events that they did, all the competitors, what were their scoring on each event, and overall scorings. And so this was a huge blessing because, like I said with the last study, I had to wait 5 years. I had to be on top of every Facebook event and contacting promoters to try to get this precious data. And here I was granted this public database that had a bunch of data for me. Now, it didn't have amateur data. That's understandable, but it had the data for professional contests. And so without their help in providing this data to the public, I might still be collecting data and I wouldn't have this book out there available for all of you and hopefully helping you with your training. So, got to give a shout out to Strongman Archives. Check out their website and feel free to donate, support the cause. It's a very great resource if you're into strongman and you're kind of like trying to understand the sport, what's been done, and then trying to predict what will come in the future and how to best prepare your body. Great resource. So finally, in 2024, just last year, I finished this thing, which was a honestly insane thing to do. I remember the months before that was there was so many times where I felt like, man, I'm never going to finish this. It's almost a decade of my life has been dedicated to this. And not like 100% of my time. It was like, oh, my kids are sleeping and I finished my training. Okay, I have a half an hour to write something here or there. So it was like very piecemeal over this decade, which made it drag on, and it made it almost by then like insufferable. I just wanted this thing to be done for my own sanity, but also so I could share it and honestly, selfishly to get feedback on it because I've been doing this research in isolation. I'm no longer part of any university or other research laboratory. There's very, and like, because there's very few studies, there's clearly very few people studying strongman at this level in the world today. So it's very much like an isolating thing. It felt really good to get this done. And I really need the feedback. So if you guys have had a chance to get the book, and read it. Send me your feedback. Good, bad, ugly, I don't care. I love the ugly because that's what helps me improve for next time. It'll help me identify what questions are remaining about the sport. There's lots. I have lots. I'm sure you guys have some that I might not have thought of yet. And that will help me find new routes of inquiry. And then I can design experiments, hopefully get some funding, and then dig into those and publish those results and, on and on. But the good news is the book is out there now, and the book answers some very fundamental questions about the sport of strongman. Like I said, there's lots of left for me to dig into, but I had four big questions I wanted. I did four studies, and I found some insights to guide training decisions or kind of give baseline numbers for how you can build training programs for strongman at a very fundamental level. And I'm hoping, with your support, that I can just keep diving into this and fine tune those answers, get bigger data sets, hopefully, interview athletes across the spectrum and coaches, and take all that data and kind of distill it down into something meaningful for you and your training. All right, so I hope that gives you a bit of background about how this all came to be, where my mindset came from, my research inquiry, how this book was created. I've been lifting weights for 20 years. I've been studying strongman, watching it for 15. I've been doing scientific research on it and competing for over a decade now. And all of this that I'm sharing with you is, well, at least my hope that you can optimize your training on day one. So the best thing that I can have from sharing this all with you is to hear your success stories about how you were able to achieve greater feats of strength than me, or at least achieve your strength goals faster and with less frustration and injuries than I have. With that, one last time here, if you want to support my work, pick up a copy of the book. Hardcover and paperback copies are on Amazon. There's a digital ebook version on my website, strengthintelligence.ca. So, next episode, I'm going to be diving into the contents of the book. We're going to be going over a brief review of the scientific literature on strongman. So, be sure to keep your eyes out for episode 2. And with that, I thank you for your time and attention. Take care.